Hey guys, it is Quincy with a slightly-better-wife.com. Just making a loaf of gluten-free bread to go with a pot of chili that I'm making for my family today. And I thought I would pop on and just show you quickly how I do it. So this is the Zojirushi BB PDC20. I'll throw a link down below for that. People have asked if you can just use like any bread maker and put the right ingredients in. I don't know. So I upgraded to this bread maker because I wasn't able to really get a good gluten-free loaf in just a regular standard bread maker. Maybe you could if you played around with it, but this has been foolproof, fail-proof. It has worked so well. So this is what we use. This is what I absolutely love. So it's not incredibly clean because this is real life, but I will just show you what I do. It's got the pan here. I stick it on a scale. This little kitchen scale was like, I think $12 or $13 on Amazon. Bread maker is on, it's plugged in. I don't have to set anything yet, but I will use course number 5 when it comes to that. I have taken the recipe from Zojirushi and then just like tweaked it a little bit for what works for our family. So that's what I'm gonna be using today. And also if you wanna just like read how to do this, there will be a link down below to the blog post where you can find that. So don't feel like you have to be jotting down notes or anything. Okay, so I start with 400 grams of water. And I'm just checking on my scale here to make sure we're getting close to that. And then I clear my scale again. I've got all my ingredients over here today. And then we do 3 eggs. I typically will use duck eggs because actually my husband and I and our oldest daughter are all intolerant to chicken eggs. I get like a really itchy scalp and like a weird stomach. So that's my reaction to chicken eggs. I've had them for years and years and these make me really fatigued and tired. So we typically do duck eggs. However, right now in the Midwest, in the winter, we are not getting much for duck eggs because there's not as much sunshine. So we're using some chicken eggs, and unfortunately these are store-bought chicken eggs too. So use what you can, don't stress. Okay, so after the 3 eggs, which comes out to about 150 grams of eggs, that's what the recipe calls for, then I add in vinegar. They say to use apple cider vinegar. I have used both. My husband is intolerant to apples, like so randomly. And so I just use regular white vinegar for that. The next one they call for is oil. I think they say vegetable oil. I've used avocado and I've used olive oil and they both work great. So I do about 36 grams of that. Again, just resetting that scale between each measurement. Like that time it was 38 grams. It doesn't have to be precise, but like you want to be fairly close to get a good loaf of bread. The next one is honey. Now, I used to leave the honey out because I was like, oh, it's extra sugar. It'll be healthier if we don't use the honey. And then my loaves kept like kind of crumbling and they were still delicious, but I realized the honey just helps hold everything together. So I think they call for 60 grams. I use 40. I don't know. That's just kind of what I've settled on. Works good for us. Okay. So I've got my notes here. We've got water, eggs, vinegar, oil, honey. Now it's time for the starch. They call for potato starch. I have also used cornstarch because my husband's intolerant to potatoes. And I'm assuming if you're here because you need a good gluten-free loaf of bread, you probably have some intolerances in your family, so maybe that's not weird to you, but to like average people, like people around us, they're like, what, you're intolerant to apples, potatoes, like healthy foods? We for sure want to stay away from that gluten, but there are some other things that we have had to work around too. So, oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to beat those eggs. So when you put your eggs in, you'll want to either whisk them ahead of time in a bowl or in the pan. And I usually just do it in the pan. No big deal. Just take a fork and break up those yolks. Sometimes I have forgotten to, and that's okay, but you may get like a chunk of cooked egg in there. So you definitely do want to try to whisk those up. When I am putting in, today I'm using potato starch. When I'm putting in the potato starch or when I get to the flour, I just kind of try to like make it kind of even across, you know? So I'm not putting a big lump right in the middle. And this will be 320 grams. And I could definitely be using a bigger measuring scoop. That looks good. Okay, and I label like, so I've got potato starch and then I label how many grams because I was getting confused between the flour and the starch when I first started. And you just want to help yourself out so you don't have to work so hard, right? So 228 grams of now rice flour. And again, you could put bigger scoops in here, but we use these for all kinds of things. And so just having a spoon in here works great. So 228 grams, again, kind of leveling it across best I can. Getting closer here. There we go, 228 even. Okay, now after you have those ingredients in, this is kind of like the glue that holds it together is how I think of it. This is the xanthan gum. I ordered this from Vitacost. I get a lot of our gluten-free items on Vitacost because there's no membership fee. And so I like to use that. This one calls for 8 grams. And it's a really light kind of powdery substance. I just sprinkle that across, kind of stopping once in a while, there we go, to give it time for the scale to catch up. So that's done. And then now I'm gonna put in salt. This is my favorite salt. I have refilled this container, this little bag, so many times. I bought like their giant salt, and like salt is supposed to never go bad. So I figured it was okay to buy it in bulk. This one is also gonna have 8 grams. Again, shaking a little in, stopping, waiting for the scale to catch up because those grains are so tiny. And I'm telling you that because I didn't used to wait. And so I would like take a big scoop or I would pour and put a lot in and I'm like, oh, now I'm at like 17. And so sometimes our kids would be like, oh, we got a salty loaf today. And like, yep, sometimes we do. And then the last ingredient, which you absolutely need to have for a bread maker, is the yeast. And I just order this from walmart.com. Usually it's like about about $5. And it lasts quite a bit. And this is 9 grams. Speaking of how long it lasts, I did a conversion and I put that on my blog for you. Like how many loaves of bread you'll get out of this. How many loaves of bread you'll get out of this. Because when I first started doing this, I got so excited and I was like, I'm one of those like all-in people. So I was like, I'm going all in. I'm gonna just stock up on all these supplies so I can be making bread for the next like 3 years for my family or whatever. Well, I need to start another one. When I did that, I didn't realize that that xanthan gum would go so far. I don't know exactly how many loaves it covers, but it's quite a bit. And so I think I bought like 6 or 8 of these to start and like, it was plenty. So pop over and take a look at that just so you don't end up buying a surplus of something that you're like, oh, did not need that much. And then on the flip side, I needed way more starch than I thought I did. Way more cornstarch at the time is what we were buying. Okay, once this is set, you go ahead and pop this into the bread maker like that. Let me bring you over a little closer. Okay. Once it is in, and you'll know it's in because you've heard that kind of click sound as it goes down in, you'll just close this and then you'll go over here to your settings. Now on the settings, I just hit up because I'm always set on course number 5. And then you can set what kind of crust you would like medium, light, and dark. I always just do medium. And then you just hit start, and that is it. And it tells you right here on the front of your bread maker what course you'll want to use. And so I've only ever used the gluten-free because that's what we do with this. But you don't have to try to remember it because it is right there for you. That medium crust loaf takes about 2 hours and 25 minutes or so, about 2.5 hours. When it is done, I have big oven gloves, you guys. I don't know, that's what I call them, like oven gloves, gloves. These have been phenomenal in the kitchen, and I know they look big and dorky, but they're nice and thick and they work so good. So because the edges of the pan do get hot, you will want to be able to grab it out with something, like use a towel, use hot pad holders, whatever, but I love these for in the kitchen. So when it's done, I will take it out with this, and then I flip it upside down onto a cooling rack, take that off, flip it over so the loaf is sitting right, and then I let it cool for a little while before we cut into it. Usually, sometimes we get right into it, but it cuts a lot better if you do let it cool. That is it. It's super simple. Now, my youngest daughter has been at camp this weekend, and she's gonna be getting home in a couple hours, right around lunchtime. So hopefully the chili and bread are ready for her. If I'm able to, I will go ahead and show you what that looks like when it comes out. Okay, the bread maker just beeped. It is finished. So on the settings right now, it's telling me that I just cooked it on course 5. medium crust and it's complete. And then it's got a little thing flashing in the top corner that says keep warm. So it will keep the bread nice and toasty warm in here because it just finished. It's very hot. So I'm gonna just hold down the cancel button until I hear it beep. Open that up. Oh, I wish you guys could feel this and smell it. It's warm and it smells so good. I have just a little cooling rack here that I like to stick the bread on to cool. Otherwise, you'll get some moisture if you just put it on like a plate or a cutting board. So I like to put it on a cooling rack, and then those gloves I told you about, because these really help so you don't get your hands burned. Okay, so let's get this thing pulled out. I want to have you take a look at it. Let me adjust my camera so you can actually see it when it comes out. All right. So here's what I do. I take it out, I put it upside down just for a minute so it can slide out, and then I gently flip it back over so it can cool. And then because this is super hot, I don't leave it on the counter. I pop it back in there, or this would be an appropriate time to wash it out really well. So that is it. That's how the bread looks. It is big, it's fluffy, it's airy inside, it's not hard. The best way to have this is to just dive right in and do it, to eat it in the next few hours while it is still really nice and warm and fresh. If you're maybe not a large family who's gonna just cut right into it and get to it, I have a lock and lock container that this fits perfectly, and it's a plastic container with a lid. Let me actually grab it quick and I'll show you the size. This is the container that I use for our bread. You also saw like I have our potato starch and our flours and our cocoa powders and different things like that in these containers. I typically don't like to store food in plastic, but there is just something about these, like the size is so practical. I use this like to fill with water to pour in our Berkey too. It's just really, really like this one. This one is HPL 822R. So if you're a Lock and Lock fan, you know, like just go look up that code on Amazon. So that's what I will store it in. So if, say I were to cut off this end of the bread, I will put it in upside down so that cut end stays flat against the bottom, and it just keeps it fresh a little bit longer. Do you want to see the soup that I made? It turned out really well. I did sample some. I put in carrots and onions from the freezer. I had pinto and black beans. I had some canned beef, some V8, diced green peppers. It turned out so good. And then I like to put ranch seasoning in it. And so that is what I use as a flavoring. We love ranch seasoning in our house right now. It's been a favorite for us. So a couple scoops of warm soup with a slice of fresh bread. There's not much better than that when it comes to a Midwest meal. We're at like -11 degrees with a real feel of like -28 today. So like this is the perfect combination. So good. If you have a good soup recipe, a good gluten-free soup recipe, I'd love to hear it. We are big soup eaters in this house, and this is kind of my standby. This is the one I make the most often. I know it's still warm. This is not the most ideal time to cut into it, but I really want to show it to you. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Oh, it is still plenty hot here. I have a bread knife that I really like using for this kind of loaf. I also have an electric knife that works so well on this fresh bread, but I don't like getting it out and plugging it in and having to wash it, so let me grab my little knife. About 3 years ago, I was sent a whole set of knives to review from Jolt, and they are fantastic knives. However, I'm kind of a minimalist, and so I didn't need this whole big set, so I kept a couple of knives I really loved, and the bread knife was definitely one of them. Now keep in mind, as I cut this, I should not be cutting this yet. I have no business cutting into this. It is still warm, it's still soft, it's not gonna cut perfectly. I just wanna put that little disclaimer out there that I should really be waiting a little bit on this, just because it'll be a little bit more firm once it is cooled, and not quite as soft. Let's see if I got into it. Oh, I did. Oh, wow. I'm gonna nibble on this. Look at that. Oh, can you even tell it's steaming? It's so fresh and good. All right, fresh bread, warm soup. I'm ready for some lunch. If you guys have any questions about the process of making gluten-free bread in the bread maker, I will link to that blog post, but definitely hit me up in the comments. I love to hear from you guys. I love to help you troubleshoot. I am not an expert by any means. I am just a regular stay-at-home mama, but this is so important to me to get this right because I spent a lot of money on this bread maker. I spent a lot of money on the ingredients, and I don't want to flop, and I don't want that for you either. So I would love to help you troubleshoot so you can get really delicious, yummy loaves of bread like this. I just want to show you the size of this real quick. Like, look at that. That is a good size loaf of bread. All right, thanks for watching. As always, go out and do something awesome. See ya.